They want to know, can they put it in the ground right now? Can they plant it in the fall, or should they wait until the following spring? Well, let me show you a little comparison here that might answer that question for us. What's up, Lazy Dog fam? Hope all y'all are having a wonderful day. It is Thursday, August 29th here in South Georgia, and we're at the tail end of hopefully what is the last really hot week of the year. So today we're going to do a little figging around, and I'm going to show you some really impressive growth on some first year trees and tell you how we got that impressive growth. Then we'll do a little comparison between some trees we planted last fall and some trees we planted this spring to try to determine when is actually the best time to put a fig tree in the ground. But first, as always, a little state of the orchard address. Now, on our last fig video a few weeks ago, I told you how this year was different because we were seeing more continual production on our trees. We really hadn't got that pause in production that we've gotten in past years, but we finally hit that pause. So of all the trees in our orchard, we've only got ripe figs on about 3 or 4 varieties at the moment. And I think that has a lot to do with ground moisture. So it's been pretty dry around here the last few weeks. Once all those frequent afternoon rains stopped, that's when the fig production kind of stopped. So even though we've been running the irrigation on these trees all night, every other night, it's hard to beat a good rain. There's nothing like getting that ground moisture restored from some nice consistent rainfall. Now maybe if we had more emitters per tree, a higher output emitter on each tree, we could substitute that a little bit better, but even our irrigation system running it as frequently as we do cannot beat what we get from a rain. Now what the irrigation system has done is set us up for a really nice fall crop of figs. Many of our trees look like this Atlanta fig tree right here, just loaded up with green figs. So although we've got a pause right now, I know a lot more are coming. And that irrigation system has also given us some really impressive growth on some of these trees that we planted back in May. So we've been pouring the water to these trees that have been in the ground just a few months, and we've got some nice growth on these, as you can see. Many of them are 3.5, 4 foot tall. Some of those down towards the end of that row there are 6 foot tall. And this Iraqi fig tree here is already a good bit taller than I am, probably 7 foot tall. And almost, not all of them, but almost all these trees we planted back in May are loaded up with green figs. Now, this being the first year for these trees, those might not ever ripen. That's okay if they don't. That is a really, really good sign that we're going to get some good production from these trees in the second year. So if and when you plant a fig tree in the ground, assuming it's not just in a low spot that stays wet all the time, you need to hammer that tree with water, and you'll be rewarded if you do. All these new trees that we planted, some in May, that row behind the one I just showed you was planted, I think, late July. We run the water on those all night, every other night if we're not getting any rain, and they respond really, really well to it. And then the other thing that really helps is feeding these trees well. Now you do have to be a little bit careful with young fig trees, especially if you're using synthetic fertilizers, because you can overdo it. And that's why I like using the Coop Grow on my fig trees, the pelleted organic fertilizer that's more slow release. It's not because of some moral high ground I have about organic fertilizers. It's because there's not near as big of a risk of burning those trees by putting too much down there. So this isn't the case with every single variety, because some varieties can be a little slower to produce than others. But if you put a fig tree in the ground, water it well, give it some nice slow release organic fertilizer a few times a year, there's a really, really good chance you're going to get some awesome growth and get some nice figs in the second year. You may get 1 or 2 figs in the first year, but usually those don't ripen. If you see figs in the first year though, no, you got a lot more coming that second year. Now we get this question all the time, and have been getting it a lot lately from people who have a fig tree in a pot. They want to put it in the ground. They want to know, can they put it in the ground right now? Can they plant it in the fall, or should they wait until the following spring? Well, let me show you a little comparison here that might answer that question for us. Now these trees here, like I told you, were planted back in May from a 4x9 pot. So they've only been in the ground, say 3.5 months. And then these trees here, the ones in this middle row, were planted last October from a 4x9 pot as well. Now this isn't exactly apples to apples because we're looking at different varieties here, and different varieties will have different growth rates. But hopefully you can tell that these right here that were planted last October aren't that much bigger than the ones we planted in May. They are bigger, but they're not that much bigger. Now, important to note here, I wouldn't recommend putting fig trees in the ground in the fall unless you were in zone 9 like we are, or further south. So we may speed things up a little bit by planting trees in the fall as opposed to waiting the following spring, but not that much. The difference there is pretty minimal. However, the risk is a lot higher. So an older, more established tree is going to be a lot more tolerant of colder temperatures. I did have a few of those trees I planted last fall get burnt back pretty hard by some freezing temps over the winter because they were only about this tall. Now they did come back, but that is a risk you take putting a smaller tree in the ground in the fall. So I would say not really worth it in my opinion. I would just keep it in the pot it's in, maybe up pot it a little bit, keep watering it, keep it nice and healthy, and wait until the spring. I don't think the risk is worth the reward. And so one of the reasons I wanted to clarify that is because pretty soon, within the next few days, we'll start back up shipping a lot of fig trees. Again, try not to ship a whole lot during August when it's so hot, but we'll be adding a lot of varieties or restocking on a lot of varieties soon. I know we got quite a few of these Violet de Bordeaux trees, got some more White Marseille trees we're adding, maybe some Smith trees. A lot of varieties are going to be restocked pretty soon if they haven't been already. And if you want to know when they're available, you can go to our website, lazydogfarm.com, scroll down to the bottom there and join our email newsletter list so you can be the first to know. So with these trees that we're going to be shipping in the fall, I would not plant these in the ground. There is an advantage to getting a tree now as opposed to waiting in the spring because it's already got a season behind it. You'll have more growth and a better chance of getting figs once you do put it in the ground. But I wouldn't put these fall trees in the ground. I would just leave them in this pot right here. Now I know these pots don't stand up that great on their own, so if you want to up pot it to a more round pot that stands up better, you know, that's fine too, but they'll be just fine in this pot right here until spring. Just keep them watered. You can let them go dormant if you want to, or you can put them inside and just keep watering them and just keep getting more and more growth on them, then plant them next spring. So stay tuned for a lot of those varieties being restocked. Now I told you earlier that we've only got about 3 or 4 varieties that are giving us ripe figs at the moment. So let's walk around and let me show you a few of those. So our Mary Lane honey figs are still in full production mode, still getting quite a few off these trees. This is a really fast growing variety, but it does benefit from some pruning. Best year ever I've had with this variety after doing some really aggressive pruning last year. We've also got a few LSU Scots black figs left on our trees. Now these are ramping up for their second round of production. We've got a few still left from that first round. Another honey fig we've been harvesting lately is this long neck yellow. We can see a couple down there that are ready to pick. Now these honey figs often get those little black sugar spots on the outside. Doesn't hurt the quality of fruit at all, but you will see that with a lot of honey fig varieties. And this is one of those that got burnt back by the cold weather a good bit last year. See that dead limb right there that I need to remove? That was all the growth I had on this tree going into last winter. And thankfully it didn't die back completely. You can see it's rebounded pretty nicely. And then the last one I want to show you is a variety that we've been patiently waiting on for a couple months to ripen. So this one is called Martinica ramata. So before they ripen, these figs have quite the color pattern on them. Nice little yellow and green striping there. Really, really pretty to see these on a tree. And those little pretty green and yellow figs will just sit there for what seems like forever. You can come out here and stare at them all you want, but they're not going to ripen until they get ready to do so. But they will eventually ripen, and they'll turn this nice, pretty burgundy color when they do. Looks like something's been trying to get into that one there. We better grab that one before something else does. So this Martinica ramata is a top-notch variety as far as flavor goes. Just takes a little bit of patience. That tree there that I showed you where we got this fig, not even 2 years old yet. Nice big tree, loaded down with figs. We've just had to wait a little while for them to ripen. So this is a berry fig, and you can see the inside there. Could have stand to ripen a little bit more, but if I left it, something was going to get it. So I got it before something else did. Man, really good flavor on those. Definitely worth the wait. And so this is a variety we don't have on the site currently, but we probably will within the next month or so. I'll have, say, 15 or 16 trees available for fall shipping, and then we'll have a lot more than that come next spring. So I hope you enjoyed the video today, and remember, if you're in a dry spell, keep giving some water to those fig trees. Even if it's an older established tree that you're not worried about dying, keep pushing the water to it, keep stimulating that new growth, because that's what's going to give you another round of figs before the cold weather arrives. And if you want to learn more about the irrigation setup in our orchard, watch this video right here. We'll break down all the pieces and how we set it up so we can just hook the water hose up and water all these trees at one time. So check that out, and we'll see you next time right here at Lazy Dog Farm.